All right, this is our third training video, and the topic is abiding in Jesus' word. So this one could go a little long. I'm going to jump right into it. This one is, how do you study the Bible? And so I'll admit, from the beginning, like if this is your first time reading the Bible can be a tough book to understand, but some practical tips I want to give you in this video. We can also certainly meet in person and talk about some of this, and we'll do some training live and in person and work on some of this. But let me just give you some basic tips here. Number one, when you begin to read the Bible, I would suggest that you pray, that you talk to God and ask Him to show you something from His Word. I want us to understand as a church that when we read the Bible, that God is communicating to us. It's meant to be a conversation between God and us. And so it's not like reading any other book you've read, a history book or the sports section or whatever. Like, this is a living document where God is speaking to us. In fact, the Holy Spirit is involved in this whole concept of reading the Bible. The Bible teaches us that the Holy Spirit is the one that led the human authors in what to write. And that if you're a follower of Jesus, the Holy Spirit lives inside of you. And one thing that He helps us do is understand the Bible. So this is important to God. He is so committed to us understanding His Word that He has given us His Spirit inside of us to help us understand it. So prayer is just a good way to remind us, or teach me something today, show me something from your Word, okay? And so the next thing you want to do is you want to have a plan for how you're going to read the Bible. And so if you've never read the Bible before, part of that plan might be, where do you start reading? And I would suggest that you start with one of the Gospels, one of the stories of the life of Jesus. I'd suggest either Mark or John. And then as you go on, one thing I would recommend is maybe to read from, I read from 3 parts of the Bible every day. I call it fishing from 3 ponds. And some days I might catch a fish in this pond, but not the other 2. Some days I may catch a fish, and by catching a fish, I mean come across something that really hits me that day, where I really do feel like God has spoken to me. So I read from a psalm, I read from one of the Gospels, and then I read another part of the Bible. And I also try to make sure I'm reading small enough portions that I'm not rushing through it to try to hit some target or deadline. I just read enough to make sure I'm hearing from God. And so another thing we're going to talk about later is another plan for studying the Bible. One is called the Discovery Bible Method, where you, as you're reading a passage, you might ask a few questions. So you read the passage, in your head, or if you're studying with somebody else, you retell that passage, summarize it in your own words, then ask a few general questions like, what does this passage teach me about God or about Jesus? What does this passage teach me about people or about me? What is God calling me to do in this passage? And then who is someone I can share what I've learned with today, all right? So that's one kind of method for studying the Bible, is just read the passage and ask a few questions like that. Another one is a basic Bible study method outline. Involves 3 things. Like, as you read it, first one is to observe the passage. What does the passage say? The second one is to interpret it. What does it mean? And then the third question is, what is God calling me to do? How should I apply this passage? I'll give you some handouts that talk about those methods. And again, when we meet in person, I'd love to show you some of those methods and actually do some of them with you. So pray, have a plan. I would also say have a place and a time. Like, reading the Bible is one of those things where it can stay in the realm of intention. Well, I'm going to read the Bible sometime. Well, good, but when are you going to do it? Like, any commitment in our lives that's meaningful to us, we'll set a time to do it. And so for me, in the morning, that's a good thing for me. Maybe for you, you're more of a night person, but I would set aside some time where you're devoted to just talking to God and reading His Word. One thing I do as part of my plan also is that I keep a moleskin of my time in the Bible, and I'll jot down a few thoughts. What did I learn from the passage that day? What is God calling me to do? And then I may write out a few praises to Him, like thanking Him for what I saw in His Word that day, or a few prayer requests, like, God, would you help me put this to practice in my life? And so that's something else I can show you in person. But pray, have a plan, have a place and time where you're going to actually study the Bible. And the last one is people. I think it's really important to be involved as you're reading the Bible with other people. And so maybe there's a partner you can pursue this discipline of reading the Bible with. That, not that you always have to study it together, although that'd be cool, but maybe it's somebody that you check in with once a week and ask them, what are you learning from the Bible? What has God been saying to you? And then you could do the same thing. You could share what you have been learning, what God has been saying to you. So again, I just threw a bunch at you. I'm going to give you some things you can read, and then when we actually meet in person, I'd love to show you some of these things. But it's good to have a plan, a place, and some people in your life as you're studying the Bible, and to begin it with prayer. All right? Thank you. Good job.